Okay, so it looks like we're ending 2025 with one of the most unhinged films I've ever had the displeasure of covering, and I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way. Yorgos Lanthimos' 2009, let's call it family drama, Dogtooth, is a perpetual attack on your comfort zone, and genuinely one of the most disarmingly disturbing films you'll ever see. Not because it's particularly violent or grotesque, so to speak, but rather it will make you feel distressingly culpable in its immensely transgressive voyeurism. Dogtooth tells the story of an unnamed family who live under the constant scrutiny of a manipulative and domineering breadwinning father who raises his 3 adult children with abnormal rules and values that, to put it lightly, stray greatly from conventional logic. Most notably, however, his children are forever forbidden from leaving their isolated compound until they've lost a dog tooth, and until then they will never understand what horrors lie beyond the boundaries of their supposedly safe haven. Now, it's difficult to fully comprehend just how jarringly absurd, darkly comedic, and emotionally abstract the entire film is without experiencing it for yourself, but if you're familiar with the work of Yorgos Lanthimos, The Lobster, The Favourite, Killing of a Sacred Deer, Poor Things, and most recently Begonia, then you'll feel uncomfortably right at home with Dogtooth. I'm not going to pretend like I understood everything I just witnessed in my first watch. Hell, even Lanthimos casually suggests the film is more of a vibe, because as is tradition with these kinds of aggressively auteur arthouse films, while it might present a uniquely singular vision, deconstructing it is a collaborative effort that will inevitably communicate something different for everyone. Obviously, I'm going to share my own interpretation to help hopefully make sense of the madness. However, I'm especially curious with this one to see what others take away from it, because there's no doubt it's very deliberate in its nature, even if delivered with a wildly unpredictable stream of consciousness. In fact, as bizarre as it looks out of context, I can imagine many people relating to what happens. What do you expect? It's Greek. Dogtooth is pretty much the epitome of the phrase "to be raised by wolves." So let's not waste any time beating around the bush here and dive into this dysfunctional and profoundly stressful nightmare that I hope to never have to experience ever again. Grab a stiff drink and fucking brace yourself. However, before we dive deeper into despair, the holidays are here and gift buying is of course as stressful as ever, or at least it would have been if not for this video's sponsor Vessi. I've been using Vessi's entire range of footwear for several years now and I cannot sing their praises enough. I've gifted them to my friends, my parents, my fiance, and take my word for it, they've all been thoroughly impressed. But if you want to be the hero of the holidays this season, I highly recommend Vessi Stormburst, because not only are they 100% waterproof, provide remarkable warmth and reliable protection, but their rugged grip and lightweight fitting design makes them perfect for battling every element the weather or your terrain may throw at you. I have a pair of both high top and low top Stormburst for daily walks with Cheddar, because they're practical, low maintenance and versatile for everyday use, and when paired with Vessi's water repellent, wind resistant, soft fleece touchscreen compatible gloves, oh boy do you transcend into cozy, lush outdoor magic that makes everyone jealous. However, you can resolve that jealousy by giving the gift of warm feet and dry hands with Vessi Stormburst and Gloves, not only a winter essential, but a gifting win. Get yours today by scanning the QR code or going to vessi.com/ryanhollinger and grab 15% off your first order plus a free pair of forecast gloves with minimum purchase, backed by a 1-year warranty and 30-day hassle-free returns. As stated, nothing I say will prepare you for Dogtooth's bewildering nature. You really have to condition yourself for it, even if the film refuses to ever let you feel at ease. In a general sense, I think the best way to describe a Yorgos Lanthimos film is that he relies heavily on inverse logic. Call it uncanny, call it absurd, hell, even call it pretentious. What makes his world so distinct is how he rejects convention in favor of dismantling social norms, ideologies, and institutions to highlight the farce of human nature. To his own admission, his films are inherently cynical and nihilistic in nature, and with Dogtooth, he brings those beliefs to the sociology of the nuclear family dynamic. The film opens by establishing the adult children as meshing between childlike demeanors and distorted intelligence as they're incorrectly taught about the world around them. It is essential to immediately grasp that they have a completely warped understanding of reality, because it's here where the film firmly plants you into this abstract state of mind. Stylistically, the film is often composed either from a distance or slightly offset to evoke a fragile sense of detachment that both reflects the vulnerable emotional disposition of the children and the insidious oppressiveness of the household itself. Initially, they are glaringly naive to the extent of their parents' lies and abuse, but what we witness throughout is an escalating tipping point where the infrastructure of this toxic family dynamic might be starting to crack and fall apart. To me, the disillusionment is always there, but the children are too afraid to rebel or defy the only existence they've ever known, with their aspiration for freedom being symbolized by the recurring motif of a plane. The compound is practically a prison. It coldly reminds the viewer that sociologically, the family, even generally speaking, is constructed and institutionalized under strict rules, disciplines, beliefs, and behaviors that are completely fabricated and molded around the father and his worldview. He basically sees his family as his sole property, his entire ownership. As Lanthimos explained in an interview with The Rumpus, the story grew out of his dubious attitude towards the stability of starting a family, and how his friends rightfully got defensive at his blunt line of questioning. In a way, the film interrogates how you can mold a person's mind, how you can enforce a certain way of life and way of thinking, and keep that going in perpetuity. To me, the father undoubtedly has a god complex and relishes in the power and control using fear, effectively perceiving the compound as though it were his Garden of Eden, and the borders beyond are like lava the children shouldn't touch. In fact, when the father impatiently tries to retrieve his dog from a training academy and is rightfully rejected, the trainer basically spells out the thesis of the film. Dogs are like clay, our job is to mold them. Every dog is waiting for us to show it how it should behave. We have to respect the process, as it were. Do we want an animal or do we want a friend? The way I bluntly see it, the father fundamentally doesn't have empathy. He simply wants to mold his children, his animals, his pets, into his own twisted image. He manipulates them into believing they'll one day have autonomy for themselves, when in reality, he has no intention of ever letting them leave the compound. Historically, abusers gaslight to make their actions seem justified, thus normalizing their behavior as a necessary evil in protecting the family and ensuring their survival, when ultimately it's nothing more than a purely selfish motive for their own self-preservation. He is an utterly unsympathetic, deplorable character. He beats his children if they disobey, he antagonizes his wife to never show emotion because that will mean weakness and the children can smell it. He even hires a security guard from his own factory to have regular intercourse with his son, who of which doesn't want to have any. I'm not going to detail every harrowing thing he does to the family, but what makes Dogtooth so agonizingly uncomfortable to the point I was looking away quite regularly is how it forces you to witness every gruelingly slow second of the abusive lives they have to live. Nothing is ever implied, all of it is shown without compromise. It left me like Alex in A Clockwork Orange. There are no boundaries to the horrors behind closed doors. We are always in the room. We are confined to a profoundly intimate and unnatural environment, and we never get used to it. For a father so aggressive about the family's privacy, we're made to intrude upon every moment like a peeping Tom with our eyes unwillingly glued to the fucking peephole. At times, it feels like you're at a zoo watching animals trying to behave like humans, not realizing how dehumanized it intentionally makes its characters to reflect the constant unflinching cruelty of the father. The constant motif of comparing the children to dogs is very overt. Hell, the father literally treats them all like dogs, with one particular scene seeing the youngest daughter just casually slice her brother with a knife in retaliation for her throwing his toy over the wall, a dog biting a dog, so to speak. It's that sharp momentary whiplash that makes you realize none of them are raised with any empathy or morality since their father has none of his own. They act like dogs, both in how they're selfish around each other and show loyalty unflinchingly to their father, all in the name of pure survival. However, to compound this, I think the mother is probably the most enigmatic character here because, while she is passive to the father's behavior, showing herself to be complicit and blindly loyal, it implies she's a victim of Stockholm Syndrome. She is an abuser herself, but when you consider the hierarchy of the family, she never has any autonomy of her own when the father is in the house. She becomes subservient to his whim when he's around. Hell, this arguably extends onto the security guard the father hires, who has an element of Stockholm Syndrome herself. She sort of fits in right with the kids almost perfectly, drawing on them for her own survival, looking for sexual favors wherever she can, perhaps alluding to abuse from her own childhood. Ultimately, the tragedy of Dogtooth is that what removes it from conventional storytelling logic is that it never draws towards a meaningful conclusion, but rather it continues to reinforce how inescapable the father's abuse is. Throughout the story, the father constantly tries to shut down any doubt as to the delusion he's invented around his children and the world they never see. For example, the kids believe that they have an estranged brother on the other side of the compound, but after the son violently kills a cat, an animal they've never seen before, the father tears up his own clothing, covers himself in red paint, and fabricates a story about how the cat was a wild beast who tore their brother apart. He uses it as a prodigal son fear tactic to cautiously warn the children why they should never leave the compound without being prepared for this big bad world, not only reinforcing their continued isolation, but reflecting extremely perverse pick and mix behaviors associated with closed-off, fanatic, religious, militant, cultic, sectarian, and doomsday groups. By the end, the family foundations begin to show their cracks, as the son is made to choose which sister he wishes to have as his new sexual partner, soon picking the oldest one who shows fear and reluctance, effectively breaking her from the illusion of what she thought was normal. This disillusionment comes after the security guard gives the daughter VHS tapes containing Hollywood blockbuster films, which she then secretly watches, thus being exposed to what is figuratively and literally foreign influence forbidden by the father. When he learns the truth, he beats her with the VHS tapes and then beats the security guard with a VHS player, but instead of fully submitting to his fear, the daughter embraces the illusion Hollywood has taught her. In a metaphorical yet paradoxical way, it's like two differing illusions colliding and cancelling each other out, leaving the daughter free to think outside the bubble that's burst. As a result, she finds autonomy for herself by battering out her own tooth forcefully, thus granting herself permission to leave the compound, which she does by hiding in the trunk of her father's car until the next day when he goes to work. However, rather than resolve this conflict and give us hope for something good to come out of all of this, in fittingly dark Lanthimos fashion, when the father does head into work the next day, the final shot lingers prolongedly on the trunk of the car before coldly cutting to black. While deliberately ambiguous, Lanthimos all but stated that the daughter likely died in the trunk. Again, the ending isn't trying to say anything explicit. All it does is darkly compound how fucked up this whole situation is to begin with. Even though she was technically the one to get away, her understanding of everything is completely illogical. She relied on her younger sister for medical knowledge, and her brother was the only one to experience any sort of intimate relation. She has no understanding of the self, her body, her identity, and being the oldest, she's been exposed to abuse the longest. There's a depraved irony in how the father calls them unprepared for the real world, and that's because of him, making them solely dependent on the isolation they only knew. In fact, the way I see it, the father has basically already moved on and now just wants to pick up his dog from the training academy, so the bleak reality is that this will probably mean nothing to him and only go to reinforce what he's done to his other children. Calling back to the brother who the children don't realize never never actually existed, the death of his daughter only strengthens his resolve to keep his children safe from the big bad world, as it were, not realizing, or rather simply not caring, that the real danger has always and will forever live within. Well, happy holidays, I guess. Good luck with any family activities you may have planned this season. Until next time, stay safe, stay away from the wildest beasts of them all, cats, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye.